27th of January 2024 at 1:03 p.m. in Berlin, Germany. Welcome once again to our cosmic journey, casting our chart in the startup universe. Designer Jake here with engineer Trey as always. Hello, Trey.
Hello, Jake.
How are you doing today?
I don't see an indication that we're recording, so I don't believe you're actually recording.
It says on air for me, so it's all good.
I'm
Don't
gonna
say
hide
anything.
the little.
Don't say anything terrible.
Don't say anything. That's right.
Exactly.
Right out of the gate.
So a couple things that are very exciting updates. Personally, I got a haircut, post-COVID haircut. Feel very good about that. Number one. Number two, I don't think there's a number two. I thought there was a number two, but I don't have it. But I will say that we're going to do the promise that we always do, which is that this video is going to be short because there's not a whole lot of things to show. However, we have been liars and cheats in the past when it's come to this.
I think the record will show that we usually have our longest videos when we say that they're not going to be long.
Very soon we'll have enough data so that there will be trends on all of this, and we can sick AI in the whole thing, and we can figure out how we can do better. But this is what our agenda is today. There are 5 points, but I think they're going to go relatively quickly. It's going to be my check-in question today. Trey's going to talk a little bit about the complexity of charts. He might show something, but for the most part, I think he's just going to talk through things. This cycle, by the way, is called N-ring Circus, because what we are doing is showing how charts lay on top of charts, and how those things are going to manifest. And I think we had the idea that we're going to show something at the end of this, but the complexity has beaten us when it has come to all of that. Doc is getting in his chair right there. There it is. Very good. And so instead of talking a lot about like what we've delivered, I think we're going to talk about why we are building what we're building and the type of company that we're building. And we're at the end of cycle 20. That means that we have a new sticker to unveil, which we're very excited about. But before we get to all of that, Mr. Henry, I've got a check-in question for you. And it's going to be based upon that building on values, not tricks point that is coming up here very soon. So when you are checking out a new product or service, something that you don't know a whole lot about, but like you are getting marketed towards, or friends are telling you about this, what kind of marketing trick or manipulation do you think works best on you to like seal the deal?
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, well, I have to think of an example. I mean, I don't know if it's a marketing trick, but I think one of the things that will often get me excited is videos of people talking about the thing or using the thing. So like if it's a game, or if it's a video game or something like that, like somebody playing it, watching somebody play it on Twitch, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm also I really enjoy, am a total sucker for the like marketing videos, like on the landing page of a site. So it's like, oh, you go to, I don't know, airtable.com, and then you see like their little, like videos, which are always like voiced over by, somebody who sounds just like really, very nice and
pleasant.
Like, hi, welcome to Airtable.
Yeah.
Within Airtable, you can do all these amazing things. And I'm like, yeah, I want to do amazing things.
I want to be amazing as well. And I think that actually speaks to really good marketing, right? Because it's not about like what it is, it's about what it unlocks. And I think that's really what
I feel when I'm using it.
How you feel about what you're using. I love all of that. It's surprising to me that you didn't say discounts or deals, because that seems to be a very common trick. But I think you and I are the same, that like discounts and deals don't really, I think, speak to us in the same way that it might speak to a bunch of other people.
Yeah, maybe. I think that, there's definitely a lot of research around the perceived value of something being tied to the cost of it. And then actually when you discount things, there's a sort of inverse association with the quality, or somebody's quality perception. I think for me, discounts, I am definitely discount focused, but only on things that I already am a consumer of in some way. So like if there's a game that I know that I would, was already on my wish list and I was going to go get anyway, and then it's on discount, then I'm like, hell yeah. Now I'm more likely to buy it when it's on discount. Or like groceries, it's like something is on discount at the grocery store.
Right.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah, but
like,
you're not the guy that's like taking the circular, the flyer, and being like, ooh, oranges are 59 cents per kilo. I have to go to Rewe or I have to go to Lidl in order to get that.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. I think for me, the way that it's worked for me in the past is when I have been interested in figuring out like how to. The last time that I can remember being manipulated into a purchase decision was when we were doing podcasting outside of this. We meaning me and my friend Dan, and one of the pieces of podcast software that is online is this one that's called Riverside, which is quite good. We don't use Riverside because it's very good, but it's a little expensive. It doesn't really meet our needs for what we're doing here. But what I was doing was like, there's got to be something better than Zoom for doing remote podcasting. Let me do some searches. This is before ChatGPT was here, and I would go right to ChatGPT to ask, which is how we found this piece of software, which you're not even seeing right now. I'm seeing this piece of software called OBS.
This piece of
software here. And I would search for like better podcasting than Zoom or something like that. And then you land not on marketing content, but you land on like good blog content that explains to you what Zoom is good for, what it's bad for. And here are some other things that you might be missing out on because you don't know about that. And Riverside was one of these things. It's like, well, if you're trying to accomplish this type of thing, you might want to use this instead. And every time I was doing searches for remote podcasting and sound, remote podcasting and, clipping and stuff like that, I always ended up like, due to good SEO on Riverside's site. And I was like, God bless it. Like, they are so good with their content and their educational content. So the way to get to my heart, I think, is to be a good educator. And then you're kind of leading me down with my nose, like, this is where we're going to go. And then I was such a sucker for the education. And then I think it goes into the next part, which is where are the discounts? What is that? Also, I will say that like having a sense of identity, like where you are part of a group, you're part of a movement, also really speaks to me quite a bit. I think that's why initially I switched from Windows to Mac probably in like the mid 2000s, because it was less about the availability of software or the power of the machines or even the price of the machines, but it really was like you are part of a movement. I'm sucker for a movement.
That's interesting. Yeah, I never really thought about that.
Do you remember why that you purchased your first Mac? Because you purchased your first Mac very early on.
Yeah. It was the first little clamshell one that came out after Steve Jobs had returned to Apple from Next.
And what was it about? Right. So this was like what year was that? 2002, and probably.
I think it was the very first version of OS X, because they had just sort of like reintegrated all of the Next stuff.
Yeah,
and
the next
basically,
step.
Yeah, and had switched to Darwin, which is POSIX based, like Linux kernel, technically BSD, but whatever. And so I was like, holy crap! It's like basically a really nice UI around Linux, which did not have nice UIs at the time. It does these days, but at that point in time, it was. So that was, so for me, it was much more technical. The reasons
that makes sense. Anyone who's listened to this podcast for any amount of time knows that it's probably a technical reason that you are being wooed when it comes to the values and the loyalty versus something that is just a pure manipulation. And we're going to talk a little bit about this, like I said, a little bit later. But first, we wanted to talk about, we kept renaming this thing. Sorry, it was, we said complexity of charts and how charts overlay with one another. Trey, do you want to talk a little bit about like what your week's been like? You had told me, before we get into that, you have told me that there were times where you were just staring at your screen blankly and like this, and you're like, I don't know what to do. So there's some complexity here. Do you want to break it down for us?
Yeah, so the complexity in well, there's multiple levels of complexity in astrology charts, as anybody who's used any advanced astrology software will be very well aware of. And the one of the things that we really want to do with Cosmic is to make it as to make it easy, to make it natural to do the most common things, and to make it possible to do the hard things, or the more complicated things. So it's still very professional software. It's just that it ramps you in. And
It
one of the
thinks like it
things,
thinks like the astrologer. Like a cosmic astrology is going to
yeah,
think like the astrologer.
yeah.
And once, yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I think we're gonna get into this in a little bit of the like what it, yeah, like how, like we want Cosmic to be for working practitioners and working enthusiasts. It's a tool.
It's a blue collar astrologer type of thing. It's really like that bar in Flashdance where all of that modern dancing was happening, where like Pittsburgh steel, like what is the astrologer Pittsburgh steel industry type of
That's an
people? The
interesting.
hardy astrologers.
Yeah,
Salt of the earth.
something like
Yeah.
that.
Salt of the skies.
um,
Sorry, salt of the earth, salt of the skies type of
Salt of the
astrologers.
firmament.
Salt of the firmament type of astrologers. That's who we're doing this for.
Yeah. So when you're looking at a chart, most people think, and certainly like what we've shown so far for Cosmic is a single date, time, and location, and then the position of things at that point in time. But of course, this is just one way of viewing astrological data. There's a lot of ways that you actually, as Jake was saying, overlay these things. So you might have a what's called like a transits view, where you're looking at somebody's natal chart with the position of the planets at right now, also being rendered on that chart. And so now, instead of having like one thing, you have n number of things. We always knew that this was going to be the case.
Yeah.
We had just never really fully talked through, what it would be. Urania supports this today as well. It supports up to two. So you can have one set of things or two sets of things, and the second set of things will be shown sort of on the outside of the wheel. But now with Cosmic, we're really uh, implementing more advanced features into this product. And one of the things that you need to be able to do sometimes is actually compare n number of charts. So you might
Which creates
say,
the N ring circus. Not a 3 ring
exactly.
circus, it's the N ring circus.
Yeah. So, you have, we could be looking at, Jake's natal chart, my natal chart, and then transits. Or we could be looking at Jake's natal chart, Jake's progress chart, and Trey's chart, and transits, right? So there's a lot of different things that you can sort of look at together, and being able, sort of separating the idea of you have positions of things that are that are based upon a date, time, and location. And then you have a chart, which is actually multiple of these things, which might be displayed in a lot of different ways. And this becomes very, very complicated because for example, each chart may have you may want to see the houses for one of those charts projected into one of those other, well, let's say rings,
Right.
projected into one of those other rings. So for example, if we're looking at my natal chart and then we're looking at the transits, we would actually want to see the transits according to my natal houses.
Right.
However, if we were showing my natal chart and Jake's natal chart and the transits, then whose houses should be rendered in the transits, right?
Good question, us.
And so you can imagine that there's just a lot of complexity with
Yeah.
all of these things. We didn't we I think both of us, from a design perspective and an implementation perspective, we knew that this was something that we needed to figure out, but we
Right.
weren't quite ready yet to really dive into it. So this week we ended up in several conversations at whiteboards, doing. I was going to bring up the schema updates for this, but it's not really useful to look at. I think it's more useful for me for reference.
Yeah. What might be
But
more useful while you're talking, what might be more useful
mhm,
is just like and I know this is very overwhelming. I've seen the object guide before, but like what used to just all be in chart now has this whole thing that's called astrological placement base, and how you're dividing up what is a chart versus what is a ring or an astrological placement now is a level of complexity that starts to devolve our previously very clean object model into something a little bit hairier.
More complex.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this is good because the way that we're thinking through this and the process that we're using to come to our answers of how charts will be rendered in Cosmic, this is a big part of the value that we're going to provide. It's going to really demonstrate like why Cosmic is different than a lot of the astrology software that exists out there. And this, so when you talk about sort of a product's unique value, like what does it bring to the market that doesn't already exist, right? And so when we think about how we are going to enable people to really, we are going to deal with the complexity of all of these like
we deal with the complexity,
all of this stuff,
so that you don't have to. Exactly.
So you'll come to the software and you'll say like, oh, I want to see, this natal chart. And then I have these 2 elections that are coming up. Let's put this election on top of there. No, I want to see this election, but I want to see that with the transits. I want to put this natal chart in there. And all of this stuff will just be like, click, drag, drop. It'll be incredibly simple and straightforward and predictable.
Well, simple, straightforward, predictable, digital first. So this is something that is missing from software. We've talked about this before. And also, like Trey said, we're taking on the complexity so you don't have to. This is really the forming principle of where astrology software is today and what we think is the future, which is instead of telling you, when we have an episode where we talk about this, instead of telling you, very good, we're pointed the correct direction, everything's mirrored. Instead of telling you all the data, we would like you to show you better, like where the data best sits, or even better than that, how you can best experience the data. And look back at that episode to see more about that. Cool, love it.
Yeah.
So aside from that, that level of kind of, like how we're gonna do the right thing when it comes to complexity, and how we're gonna do the right thing when it comes to, like experiencing the data versus showing versus telling, all of that. On the side, because I can't think about design all day, every day, I've been thinking a lot about like what our marketing is going to look like. And we're not going to bore you by talking about our thoughts on marketing, but it did lead us on a path of like, how do we drive loyalty to, how do we build a company that is about values, which is driving loyalty, as opposed to a company that is trying to use manipulations, which we talked about at the start of this episode, so that you can like drive a purchase decision. And I want to be clear. Oh, I actually had a podcast viewer tell me, I say, I want to be clear, or just to be clear. So sorry about that. I said that again. But I do want to be clear, though, just because we're talking about like not building a company that's based upon these transactional manipulations doesn't mean that those manipulations won't exist in the product. They're just not the thing that we lead with. So instead of me kind of talking through that, I'm going to do something that I've been very hesitant to do, which is I'm going to run you through a slide deck. Now, here's the thing about this slide deck. If I hit the key sequence correctly, there we go. Here's the thing about this slide deck. At least it's pretty. So we've got that going on for us. So we're interested in the values side. Again, everything's mirrored. We're interested in the values side of everything, trying to answer these questions ahead of time so that the way we behave, how we behave, what we do, the marketing, how we communicate, all drives at values, which is really answering 3 questions. And these 3 questions should be answered in this order. Why does Cosmic exist? Trey and I had talked about, thumbs up. Trey and I had talked about using this time to explain a little bit about like why Urania existed and what it was trying to solve, to drive at this question. I think we have enough content we'll save that for a future episode. For having no content, we're 20 minutes in, just by the way.
Sounds
After
good.
always after we answer the question, why does cosmic exist, then it's like, well, how does cosmic's vision, Trey and me, like, how does our vision connect to what our future members will care about? And this is that whole thing of like salt of the firmament type of astrologers, people who are actually working in this kind of stuff, people that have not had access to the software either because it was too expensive or too complex for them to really dive into it and to take their enthusiasm for astrology and push it forward. We're forming all of that. And then we get into, well, what will Cosmic do that we'll appreciate? I think Trey and I come from a school of thought where, because we're very old, seasoned product, like digital product makers, we can start with what, and then we can build up from how to why. But I can tell you that, like, Trey and I were visiting a friend in the hospital, unfortunately, and Trey was talking a little bit about cosmic, and he went right to what. And I could see that this person who has some connection with not astrology, but like things that are not of Earth, started to like not fully understand what we were talking about. And the reason why I think that is because we didn't start with why. Like, why are we doing this? How is this going to manifest? And then what? Anything you want to add to that side? What we're driving loyalty, or, I just threw you under the bus. Would you like to respond to that?
No, I often do start with the what. And if anybody's curious, the person who's in the hospital is fine.
Yeah, he's great. In fact, I mean, not great. He's still in the hospital, but he's doing
Yeah,
fine.
he's still in the hospital. He's got to be in there for a little bit, but he's doing fine.
By the way, we have a technical error here. I have put your face on top of uh, the the text that is being shown on the screen. That's okay. We can
Oh,
we'll do.
you can just shrink it down a little bit.
Oh yeah, I know. But then you're gonna see my desktop and all kinds of things. And does that work? Yeah, much better. Okay, now you're seeing my schedule down here, which we'll deal with in a second. So, like I said, there are manipulations, and I use that term, like I use a very negative term here. Oh, by the way, this whole framing of manipulations and values, big thanks to Seth Godin for educating me on this. This is part of that, like, reading and kind of baking in the idea of like what kind of company we want to build and why we want to build it and how is it going to express itself. So a lot of this comes from Seth Godin. This is kind of my interpretation on what Seth Godin talks about here. So you go to the manipulation side, then we're talking about ways in which we can drive transactions. So how can we manipulate or obfuscate the price? We would probably not obfuscate, but rather manipulate. Price manipulation is very common. This is what Trey was saying. If there's a discount, 15% off, 20% off, I'm going to take it. Sometimes that does the tipping point, which is a tactic, but can drive transactional behavior, which we can talk about in a second. I just got my solar return is coming next week, which I'm very excited about. And a bookstore that I really like here in Germany sent a message to me that said, like, in German, happy birthday. And it was just very sweet of them to send me a happy birthday message. And then inside, they sent me a 15% off coupon, which is great, but they didn't have to do that because I actually just appreciate that they like my birthday. But you know what? I'll probably take them up on that 15% off now. And that is a manipulation. Again, what kind of discounts or rebates can we offer to juice that growth? That is very, very typical in our industry. And then things that are still typical in our industry, but are less used, but are probably used more effectively. What fear, consequences, or FOMO could motivate a conversion, or could motivate someone to stay after they did convert? So how do we retain customers? And usually that is, if you're uneducated with what FOMO means, FOMO is the fear of missing out. And that is a way that can motivate either a sale or can motivate someone to stay with us even when they don't necessarily want to stay. And then a more positive way of doing the kind of fear side was, what aspirations could we promise to get folks to cosmic? We could say things like, be a better astrologer. I don't know what other aspirations we could give, but like we could use very manipulative aspirational language to drive that. There's this whole thing of identity and peer groups. This is the whole thing we talked about with Apple. Like, identity. Like there's a way that you can create identity. So you are part of a group. The way that certain sites will do this, they'll say things like 27 people have purchased this in your area, and kind of saying like, well, if 27 people have purchased this in my area, why am I not going to be 28th? What am I what am I missing out on? Part of that community. And then I put this at the bottom of the list because it's important, and it's going to be important for Cosmic. What novelty or innovations could make Cosmic more attractive than other astrology software? We will do that. The reason why it's a manipulation is because I fully expect and will be incredibly happy with the day that people are copying what we're doing in their software to try to drive growth as well. Because anytime you do like a really nice feature or a really nice type of innovation, it is eminently copyable, and everyone copies everybody else. There is no original idea here. And so you can't build a company on these innovations alone. There's no way to trademark this stuff unless it's super truly innovative. But we can, even stuff like the iPhone, which was super truly innovative, there's a bunch of copycats that had happened here. Okay. This is why we don't do slides, because it's just me lecturing. So let's get into something that feels a little bit less like slides. So, and I think this goes to a bigger point of like the types of people that we would like to hire at the company. Trey and I have a anti-product manager stance at our company, and we do not want to hire product managers. And the reason we don't want to hire product managers is not because great product managers aren't great. It's because great product managers, or even I would say good product managers and down to okay and to bad, their whole craft is the manipulation side. That's really all that they do and all that they are motivated to do. And so we want to build something that feels more holistic and values-based. And so why would I hire a group of people whose craft is manipulation and then say to them, please don't manipulate, you know? Is there anything that you want to add to the product manager thing? Before I've got an example of how this might go down if we were to hire a product manager.
Oh yeah, we wouldn't.
No, I don't think we would, but we'll show you an example of how this might go down. But like, is there anything else with the product manager thing that you think I missed?
No, I would just say it might be a little bit weird for people watching, looking at like a list of manipulations and us talking about like, these are types of manipulations that we might do. And I think it's probably important to think about this more in terms of, every human interaction to some extent is there's an interaction point, and that interaction point, it's how you approach that and what you are, what you're trying to get out of it, and what you want the other person to get out of it, is all kind of under that purview of manipulation. Right?
It's like they're all transactions. They are all transactions.
Yeah. It's not necessarily. There's kind of like there's where you're coming from, which is sort of that values side of it. So it's kind of like, who you are on the inside, what you bring, sort of to the table. But then there's this like how you interact, and how you interact is, it's a back and forth, right? Yeah. It's a manipulation both ways. And there's a lot about this stuff that is, as a moral compass, because this starts to get into the ideas of like, what does a moral compass mean for a company? And, from a moral compass perspective, what we want to do is build a company that makes great products and services in our vertical and is able to sustain itself so that we can continue to grow it and continue to, like, within reason. We have no expectations that this is going to be, like anything other than a, sort of in the best scenario, a family-run business with, a handful of employees, right? Like that's the kind of market cap that we're talking about anyway. And so, when talking about these things like how we build the company, how we present the company, what our values are, and then how we interact with the customer in ways to help create that sustainability, create that ability for us to just continue to do this. That's what we're talking about in that column. So while it's, it is, I think it's very easy to like look at something like that and then just say like, manipulations, oh, that's evil. Why would you do any of that?
Right.
Right. But like Jake said, if you go to the grocery store and something's on discount, that is a manipulation. Like that is a, it's a very specifically price manipulation.
Yeah. What we're saying is we're leading with this. We're not leading with that. And
Correct.
The reason why we are so allergic to product management is because the whole product management craft is to lead with that. I have met great product managers that lead with this, but is that usually what they're incentivized to do? There might be a day in the future, we probably will never call them product managers, where we hire people that are thinking purely about the business, but they have to think about the business in terms of the values first, and then how do you make sure that you are driving transactions in a kind of meaningful way? That's really what we're talking about. As Trey said, I showed him this slide and I said like, look, I'm making slideware here, but at least it's pretty slideware. And he said, oh, the manipulations are, while they look bad, they still look amazing. And I'm like, that's still tasty. That over there is still delicious. It looks like a tropical drink. But the thing is that you're not supposed to start with a tropical drink. You're supposed to start with your vegetables and your like, why are you here and everything. And then you can kind of top it off with a tropical drink type of thing. So let me explain a little bit like how this might go down if we were to not think about this reasonably or holistically, but rather think about this in terms of like how the industry thinks about this. So let's say that we want to drive loyalty, right? And so we've got this product manager here, and he's like, oh, we need to drive loyalty. Product manager, how are you going to go about driving loyalty? And the product manager said, oh, I've got the way to do it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a loyalty program. Oh, okay. So what is this loyalty program going to do? Okay. So the loyalty program, and it's all going to be about discounts and rebates. And, the more time that you are a Cosmic member, a paying member of Cosmic, we're going to give you more and more discounts and rebates. And that's really what the transaction is going to look like. However, that's not enough. If you cancel your account or you pause your account, these discounts are going to expire. So it's going to maintain this kind of continuous loop of engagement, right? And so people are going to have this fear that if they stop being paying members of Cosmic, that they're going to miss out on this kind of thing. And then I've got this great branding for it too. We're going to call it the Cosmic Club, and either you're fam or your moves are weak. And if your moves are weak, that's bad. So, right, like, but if you're fam, you're fam. And this is why, like, this doesn't work for us, and it doesn't work for anyone, because what you're doing is you're leading with manipulation and you're not actually driving loyalty. So we've talked about discounts, then we talked about FOMO, then we talked about identity. And to build a loyalty, to say I want loyalty and then jump immediately to I want a loyalty program, and that loyalty program is going to have all of these things. That's really what we want to avoid. We want to actually drive true loyalty. We want to drive true loyalty, and the way that you drive true loyalty is to explain to folks why you exist, how this why connects to what they care about, and then what do you do at the end of that kind of thing. And when you do that, the promise is that the marketing gets better, the deals get better, the customers are inherently more loyal because they connect with you, and those customers that are purely there just to get a discount from you or just to get something from you, they will probably be repelled by us, and that's okay because they probably don't really match our vision. And I think we can safely say that, not that we're ever going to be of this size, but like Apple does not have the majority of the market. They might have the majority of like an iPhone market, but they never had the majority of a computer market. It was always PCs that were the majority of that market, and they
And
built.
that's still true.
Yeah, and that is still true. The majority of
Although
computers.
one would hope that Apple is the is the number one in the iPhone market.
Yes, I meant smartphones, not iPhones.
Yeah,
Yes,
I know.
indeed. But like,
Yeah, and they're not number one, not by units, not by a long shot by units.
correct,
Android
correct.
phones are by far the number one.
And so like go into like a bit of economics here. The market cap I think Apple is the most valuable company on earth. Might still be. It might trade between
It's
Amazon
definitely one
and Apple.
yeah.
But I think at least for some amount of time, and I think it's still true, that Apple is the most valuable company on earth. How can you be the most valuable company on earth and still not have the majority of computers that's sitting on people's desktop, the majority of servers that are sitting within, I'm pointing to the server that's down there. That server does not run OS X. It's not a Mac server at all. You don't
It
even
doesn't
have
run
the
Windows either.
Yeah, it doesn't run Windows either. It runs Linux. You don't have the majority of smartphones in this world. And on top of that, like your services, like forget just hardware. Think about software for a second. You certainly don't have the majority of services that are being used right now. That's probably Google right now. And yet still, they're the most valuable company on earth. And the big theory here is that the reason why is because they drove loyalty through a deep connection to these questions being answered in this order. And that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, except for we don't want to be Apple.
We're not going to be Apple. We're just taking cues from Apple.
Yeah.
In that
Yeah,
idea.
I think it is interesting to, if you look at the evolution of these much bigger companies, and certainly Jake and I have worked at companies big and small, and have gone through this journey with startups and coming on to larger companies at early stages and larger companies at later stages. And no company ever initially sets out to become the evil megalith that it ultimately turns into.
Correct.
And I think there's a real interesting question about just sort of the nature of
how someone drifts away from their purpose, how someone drifts away from their why.
And yeah, especially when it's not someone, but it's this like
it's some
conglomerate.
entity. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But anyway, so with Cosmic, with us, and particularly like because of the nature of the thing that we're working on as well, which is inherently sort of magical and spiritual. We are, we hope that the steps that we are taking now allow us to, as I said, build a company in this. Like at the end of the day, we are part of the culture that we're in. We're part of the economics that we're in. We're part of the, the structure that we're in. You can't be separate from that, as much as you might like to. And in order for us to build something that is sustainable, these are things that we have to think through. But if we think through them with the same level of passion and rigor and this sort of thing, and really bake them into who we are, then hopefully, if we are successful, or when we are successful, those things will continue to carry forward, and we won't become the evil entity that
I think that if we ever become
wants us to be.
Correct. I think that if we're ever going to be the evil entity, that I think Trey and I are going to be out, because it's not our company anymore. We don't want to be that. We don't want to build that. And I think all we can say is that we're thinking about it, and on our best days, we're doing the right thing. And at least I think between the two of us, and we're the two founders of the company, we're the only two employees right now, we are going to hold very strong to that why and how we do things, so that whatever, like when it comes to hiring, when it comes to marketing, when it comes to advertising, everything else is going to reflect that deep passion for why we're doing what we're doing, and connecting to you all, so that we can create something of a sustainable, non-evil corporate entity. Wouldn't it be nice to have one? It'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah, I think also there's definitely something to be said for the fact that we are funding this ourselves. We're building this ourselves. If we do ever take money at some point, it will be from a growth perspective, and it will be
Oh,
uh, once we are already at the point where we have a sustainable company, then we would look at, if we had some money, we could do this, or if we had some money, we could do that we don't have today. So we might take some investment, but that would only be, we would not pay a lot for that money.
but that investment the investors have to understand and be fully aligned with what's happening up here.
Yeah. And
There's
we would
no
also
way we
never
would take it
go,
otherwise.
yeah, we would also never become a public company either because of the same reasons.
Yeah.
At that point in time, you were no longer, it's very difficult, I think, and this has been shown over and over and over again with companies, that it's, once you go public, you are no
You're beholden
longer
to institutional investors, not individual investors,
correct.
institutional investors. And those institutional investors are looking for short-term gains.
Yeah. And then that drives everything towards that manipulation side of that chart. And that's when you end up with hordes of product people.
And that's not going to happen. We're not going to have hordes of them. We're going to have 50 of them. But I'm very excited to unveil Cycle 20's sticker. So every 10 cycles, we have a sticker. So sticker 0 was I guess here I could cut in some shots of like showing the stickers, right? So it's the I would say the gussied up pentacle. Cycle 10 was the footsteps towards the heavens and towards the, something outside of Earth, outside of the material plane. Cycle 20, is it so high-minded? You be the judge. It's the cosmic peach. And on top of that, it's the cosmic peach with glitter.
Glitter outline.
Yes, because Trey made it very clear to me he wants glitter. And here we are.
Glitter sticker.
And so I'm very excited to get our glitter sticker. Congratulations for getting through Cycle 20, Mr. Henry.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah. Well,
I think we're doing good.
Yeah, we're going to do great. We're doing good. We're going to be great. And the only promise that I have is that we are going to be better every single day. And we take stock on what we're doing, and we're just going to keep it going. The podcast is looking better. The podcast is more professional. Just imagine that that's also happening in software. It probably is.
Exactly. It probably is.
All right.
As far as anybody knows.
As far as anyone knows. One day they'll see it. Until then, be well, everyone. Have yourself a lovely Saturday or whatever day you're seeing this lovely message. Be well. We love you all. Take care. Bye.
Bye.